You ever driven through the Mallee at night? Long, flat roads, not a soul in sight. Just scrub, stars, and that strange silence that gets in your head. Out here between the wheat fields and railway lines, stories have a way of sticking around. They don't always make the news, and they're not always neat, but they're real, and sometimes they're downright chilling. Tonight we're heading to Ouyen and the surrounding Mallee region for 5 true tales that haven't been forgotten. A missing baker, a silent death on a dirt road, a crash with no clear cause, and something buried beneath the railway that nobody wants to talk about. These aren't ghost stories. These are stories about real people, real places, and the strange things that happen when no one's watching. Welcome to Midnight Narratives. The Disappearance of William Bernard Harrington, Ouyen, 1952. In the stillness of a winter morning in June 1952, the town of Ouyen awoke to troubling news. William Bernard Harrington, a well-liked 50-year-old baker and pastry cook, was missing. A quiet, routine man, Harrington was known for his early mornings at the bakery and his dependable manner. So when he failed to show up for work or return home the night before, friends and neighbors immediately sensed something was wrong. He had last been seen walking toward the Ouyen railway station just after dark. It wasn't unusual for locals to walk the tracks for short distances, especially back then. But what stood out was how suddenly he vanished. No bags packed, no farewell, no hint of personal troubles. The timing made the situation more unnerving. Just one day earlier, Harrington had been chatting casually with customers about the weather and weekend plans. Everything about him seemed normal. Police launched an official search the following day. Over 100 people, including officers, railway workers, local farmers, and townsfolk, formed search parties. They scoured the train yards, combed the bushland outside town, and checked farm dams and culverts. Railway staff even examined the undercarriages of carriages and along the tracks, fearing he may have been struck by a train. No blood, no clothing, no evidence of any kind was found. At one point, a theory emerged that he may have hopped a freight train and disappeared by choice, but those who knew Harrington dismissed it. He had no known mental health concerns, no debts, and no apparent motive to abandon his life. His wallet and all his personal belongings remained untouched at home. Police quietly suspected foul play, but had no leads and, ultimately, no body. The case faded from public attention after a few weeks, but in Ouyen, his name lived on in whispers. Elderly locals who remember the search describe a strange tension in town that winter, the sense that someone knew more than they let on. There was one odd detail that still bothers some. Harrington had apparently made a comment to a friend a few days prior that he had been feeling watched on his early morning walks to work. He laughed it off at the time, saying, "Probably just one of those possums near the bakery bins," but in hindsight, it seemed like something worth paying more attention to. To this day, no trace of William Bernard Harrington has ever been found. His case remains open but cold, archived deep within the Victoria Police missing persons files. Ouyen, like many small towns, has its share of mysteries, but this one cuts deep. Because William wasn't just some name in the paper, he was one of theirs, and he disappeared into thin air just a few hundred meters from home. The man found alone on Wood Road, 2024. Unexplained death/remote discovery. On the morning of February 22, 2024, a motorist traveling along the isolated Wood Road, about 16 kilometers north of Ouyen, spotted something strange in the gravel shoulder ahead, a motionless figure lying just off the road. Thinking it might be an injured roo or possibly someone suffering from heat stroke, the driver slowed down and pulled over. What they found was far worse. The man was clearly deceased. He was alone, lying on his back, arms at his sides, with no visible signs of trauma or external injury. His vehicle, a white sedan, was parked nearby but not in a ditch or crash position. It looked as if it had simply been parked in haste or confusion. His door was left slightly ajar. Victoria police were called and the road was shut for hours while the scene was examined. The deceased was identified as a man in his 30s, known to authorities but not wanted for any crime. There was no evidence of a struggle, no signs of self-harm, and no drugs or weapons in the car. His phone was dead, there was no note. Autopsy results were inconclusive. Toxicology reports came back negative for major substances. His heart showed signs of arrhythmia, but not enough to declare it a definitive cause of death. Dehydration was ruled out. He had bottled water in the car, unopened and unexpired. The weather had been hot, but not extreme. No medical conditions were recorded that would have explained a sudden collapse. So why had this man driven to the middle of nowhere and died? It was the location that truly puzzled everyone. Wood Road is a remote, sparsely trafficked stretch that winds between dried paddocks and state forest, the kind of place only locals or backcountry travelers would know to use. There were no towns, homesteads, or tourist areas nearby, and nothing in the car, no map, no messages, no receipts, explained why he was there. Locals began speculating. Some suggested heat stroke-induced confusion, but again the man had water and his clothes were weather appropriate. Others said it could have been psychological. Maybe he went there intentionally, but nothing in his background or behavior suggested suicidal ideation. One rumor floated that he'd been looking for something, an abandoned homestead, an old military site, or even a person. Then came the odd detail. His shoes were found placed neatly beside his body, not kicked off, not scattered, placed, as if he'd taken them off calmly before lying down. That, more than anything, disturbed the coroner's assistant, who was later quoted anonymously saying, "It's like he knew he was going to die." Police closed the case with an open verdict, cause of death undetermined. They offered no further public explanation. Privately, some officers reportedly said it reminded them of similar odd bush deaths, cases where individuals seemed to suddenly deteriorate without warning in remote areas with no sign of foul play. To this day, flowers occasionally appear on the roadside near the site where he was found. No one has claimed responsibility for leaving them. And in the farming communities north of Ouyen, people still talk about the man on Wood Road, a ghost story born not from folklore, but from reality. A man who died quietly under a blazing sun in a place he had no reason to be, with his shoes beside him, and the 1,000 questions left behind. If you're from the Mallee, or know someone who is, maybe one of these stories rings a bell. And if not, you'll think twice next time you're driving past Ouyen, with only red dust and dead signal around you. If you enjoyed these stories, give this video a like. It helps more people find the channel. And if you want more true Aussie horror each week, go on and hit that subscribe button. No pressure, but out here, it's good to stick together. Thanks for listening to Midnight Narratives. Got a local legend or strange encounter of your own? Drop it in the comments or email us. You just might hear it here next time. Until then, keep your lights on and your windows up. Some roads were never meant to be quiet. The bunker beneath the Ouyen Railway, 1942 to present. Most locals in Ouyen know the railway yard. It's been the lifeblood of the town since the early 20th century, once bustling with steam trains, wheat shipments, and railway workers. But few people, even lifelong residents, know what lies beneath it. Back in 1942, during the height of World War II, Ouyen was chosen as a minor inland logistics point. Its remoteness and railway access made it ideal for the movement of supplies and personnel. That year, without fanfare or public explanation, a military team arrived in town. Over several weeks, they fenced off a section near the rail yards and began digging. Locals were told it was for rail maintenance upgrades. But when the project finished months later, what was left behind didn't look like rail infrastructure. What emerged was a series of reinforced concrete chambers, partially underground, partially covered in earth, with a steel hatch and a vent system that jutted out like chimneys. Then, just as quietly as they came, the workers left. No official plaque, no public mention. The structure was locked and forgotten. That would have been the end of it, except for what happened in the decades that followed. In the 1970s, a teenage boy reportedly snuck into the structure through a broken side panel. He later told mates it was like a bomb shelter, with metal bunks bolted into the walls and shelves with what looked like old ration tins. One of the bunks had restraints on it. He was scared off by a loud metallic bang from somewhere inside and ran out. He never went back. His story was laughed off, but he never changed the details, even into old age. In the 1990s, the hatch was welded shut by local council workers after a group of kids got in and claimed to have found medical-looking stuff, including rusted trays, a blood-stained cloth, and handwritten notes in faded pencil. One note reportedly read, "Patient 3, unfit for transport." Whether that was real or teenage imagination is still debated. Then, in 2006, a local amateur historian named Graham Mitchell started looking into wartime activity in Ouyen. While combing the Public Records Office, he found an incomplete reference to Test Site Victoria, code Mallee 12, associated with Army logistics operations. The coordinates listed? Less than 200 meters from the Ouyen Rail Depot. Mitchell submitted a Freedom of Information request to learn more, but received a formal notice that the records were sealed until 2050. The site still exists. It's overgrown now, just mounds of grass-covered concrete with a single rusted vent sticking out. Ask around town, and most people don't know what it is. But a handful of older residents will nod knowingly and say things like, "There's stuff under there that shouldn't be," or "They say it was a bunker, but no one ever saw soldiers use it." Whether it was a makeshift hospital, a wartime experiment site, or just an abandoned shelter, no one can say for sure. But for a place as small and quiet as Ouyen, the idea that something secret and possibly sinister was built right underfoot still unsettles those who know. Some nights, especially after heavy rain, a low metallic hum is said to come from the ground near the vent. Just long enough to be heard, not long enough to prove. Locals brush it off, but the story remains. What exactly happened under the Ouyen rail yard and why it's still locked tight more than 80 years later is one of the Mallee's strangest open secrets. The Skeleton in the Mallee Scrub, 2021. In the vast Mallee wilderness, not far from the Sunraysia Highway, nature hides more than wildlife. In March 2021, a grim discovery near the Milawa Southboard Track, just outside Ouyen, revealed one of the most unsettling scenes Victoria Police had encountered in the region for years. A human skeleton, partially buried in red sand and overgrown with Mallee scrub. It started when a group of recreational shooters, out spotlighting in the bush, noticed something odd sticking out from beneath a fallen tree limb, pale and weathered, almost like driftwood. Upon closer inspection, they realized it was part of a rib cage. The group immediately contacted police, and within hours the area was cordoned off and treated as a crime scene. What followed was a painstaking forensic investigation. The body had clearly been there for a long time, long enough that most of the soft tissue was gone and the clothes had disintegrated into faded scraps. No ID, no phone, no wallet, just a skeleton and the dry Mallee wind. Initial forensic dating placed the remains as being there for at least 12 months, potentially up to 3 years. This meant the person likely died sometime between 2018 and 2020, during a period where multiple missing persons cases had been reported in Victoria, but none specifically from Ouyen. Police began cross-referencing DNA samples with national databases, hoping to match it with someone reported missing. But here's where things get stranger. The cause of death couldn't be determined. There were no obvious signs of trauma. The skeleton had no broken bones, no bullet holes, and no damage that indicated an animal attack. Toxicology was impossible due to the advanced state of decomposition. Even stranger, the body had been found in an area not easily accessed by foot or vehicle, a dense, thorny patch of bush off an unmarked track known only to hunters, farmers, and experienced bushwalkers. Despite canvassing the area and conducting door knocks across nearby communities, no one claimed to have seen anything unusual, no missing persons matched, no locals recognized the composite image police generated using cranial data. It was as if this person had simply appeared, died in the middle of nowhere, and vanished from memory. Theories began circulating. Some suggested the deceased was a drifter, someone moving through the region quietly, possibly off-grid. Others suspected foul play and a body dump, pointing out that the remote location was ideal for someone looking to hide a crime. A few believed the person had gotten lost, perhaps dehydrated in the searing summer heat, and simply never made it out. But that begged the question, why had no one looked for them? A woman from Red Cliffs claimed she'd seen a man walking alone down the Millewa track the previous year, barefoot, shirtless, and sunburnt, talking to it. The official case remains open and unsolved. The remains were given a forensic ID number and cremated after 18 months, with no next of kin coming forward. No one has ever stepped forward to claim they knew the person, nor has any missing persons database matched the DNA. Local bushies still talk about it. Some avoid the Malewa South Bore area altogether. One farmer was quoted anonymously saying, "That skeleton wasn't meant to be found. Someone out there thought it was buried for good." In a part of the world where the land swallows secrets as easily as it swallows footprints, the skeleton in the Mallee remains a ghost, with no name, no story, and no one looking for them. The Tragedy at Chinkapook, 2023. In the remote stretches of the Mallee, just over an hour's drive from Ouyen, lies the nearly forgotten locality of Chinkapook. Known today mostly for wheat paddocks and the occasional silo, Chinkapook rarely makes the news. But on the evening of December 22, 2023, that changed in a moment of violent silence. At around 5:30 p.m., a car carrying two people, a man and a woman, collided head-on with a semi-trailer at the intersection of Robinvale Sea Lake Road and Chinkapook Pier Milan Road. The truck driver, shaken but unharmed, immediately called emergency services. First responders arrived within the hour, but it was already too late. The man was pronounced dead at the scene, and the woman succumbed to her injuries shortly afterward. Both were locals. The intersection itself is infamous among Mallee drivers. Long, flat stretches of road where dust can obscure vision and where signage is minimal or weather-worn. Residents had, for years, complained about the visibility around that junction. There were even whispers of near misses that never made it into official records. But what happened next is what makes this story linger in people's minds. Locals who arrived on scene before police cordoned it off reported something strange. The wreckage had landed in an eerily clean T formation, the car perfectly perpendicular to the truck, almost as if it had been positioned deliberately. One of the volunteer firefighters later remarked to the press that it looked staged, too clean for the mess it should have been. Police ruled the crash accidental, citing speed and poor visibility as the likely cause, but that didn't stop the rumors. People who knew the victims, especially the woman, began to share uneasy details. She had told a friend just a week earlier that she had a bad feeling about Christmas. "I don't think I'm going to see it," she had reportedly said. It was chalked up as a moment of morbid joking, until she didn't. Even more chilling were dashcam clips taken by a local trucker just hours before the crash. In them, a lone figure is seen walking the shoulder of the very same intersection. No car, no clear destination, just trudging through heat and flies. Police examined the footage, but publicly dismissed any connection. However, the timing raised hairs. Some thought it may have been a drifter. Others thought it was something else entirely. After the crash, that intersection saw a sharp decline in traffic. Truckers took detours, and some locals even started calling it the crossroads, half joking, half serious. A local farmer, who asked not to be named, began leaving flowers at the intersection every December. When asked why, he simply replied, "They didn't have to die there. That place has taken before, and it'll take again." While the accident was ultimately ruled a tragic mishap, those who live near Chinkapook aren't convinced. Whether it's just a cursed patch of road or something less tangible, the feeling is the same. When you pass through the crossroads, you slow down. Not just out of caution, but out of respect. Because out there, On that empty stretch of road, the silence has weight.